Hi everybody, this is John from Aim High Family Firearm Center. And today with me I have Jimmy. He is our training manager here at Aim High. We're going to be talking about shotguns and the pros and cons of having a shotgun for home defense. How you doing today, Jimmy?
Good. How are you today, John?
I'm great. So we're going to start with the types of shotguns. So Jimmy, can you tell me what we got in front of us right here?
Right here we've got a break action 12 gauge shotgun, or actually it's 20 gauge in this model here, but you can get them in a lot of different calibers. There's a lot of advantages to having, a break action shotgun. One, obviously it's very simplistic. You got a lot less chances of any type of malfunction. Big downside of it is that you only have 2 shots. But hopefully in a close quarter situation, you maybe don't need a whole lot more than 2. What do you think about the break action?
Well, the break action, like you said, it's very simple to use. Just breaks right open, you put in your 2 shots. But like you said, 2 shots is all you got. You better hope they count. It's very simple, very easy to use. This could be for somebody that's never shot a gun before, somebody who's not comfortable around using a pump action. Just simple, put in your 2 and it sits there until you need it. So, speaking of pump action, here's the next one. Jimmy, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
A lot of advantages to a pump action. One great advantage to a pump action, typically, if I use one for home defense, I usually have it loaded, the magazine tube loaded with ammunition. I usually don't keep one in the chamber because I want that psychological effect. If somebody does come into the house late at night, they can hear this. And it's one of the most distinguished sounds, pretty much anybody knows exactly what that is. So it can be a good psychological deterrent, and then you don't have to worry about, all the other stuff that comes next. They just turn around and run out the house.
What I like about the pump is, again, it's simple to use. It holds more ammunition. We're talking anywhere from 5 to 8 rounds. I mean, like you said, everybody knows that sound. And if you don't know that sound, what's next is pretty scary.
Pretty unfortunate too.
So this one has, like we talked in our last video, we talked about chokes. This one has a cylinder choke. And the nice thing about a pump action shotgun, for example, like I keep mine, is I can space out my load. So I could start off with a game load, work my way up to a double-aught buck, and if that doesn't work, then I got myself a slug. So that's a good advantage with the pump. You can keep a number of rounds through there. Some states have laws that you have to keep a non-lethal first. So again, with a pump, it's really nice that you have if you need a non-lethal for your state law, non-lethal first, and then you've got all your lethals in there, which gives you a wide variety of ammo. Which leads into our next thing. Some people don't like pumping; they just like pulling the trigger. So what we got here next?
Semi-automatic. Works basically the same way that a pump gun does, except the mechanisms inside the gun itself does half of the work for you. Essentially, whenever it's loaded, all you have to do is just pull the trigger, and it's going to eject and reinsert the next cartridge for you, or the next shotgun shell. So it's a great option. It's a lot quicker. You don't necessarily have that sound, although you heard whenever we first picked it up, when it first closes, you do get a little bit, about half of that sound that you would from the pump gun. So it's a great option. They shoot incredibly fast, so if you need that extra stopping power in very short succession, you have that option.
The one thing I do like the semi-automatic shotgun a lot because of that quick succession. The one thing I don't like is if you don't hold it right, it can jam. Semis are prone to jam if you don't break them in properly as well. This one is a gas piston system in here. They do inertial systems. You just got to make sure with any pump shotgun you get it really shouldered really well and get it fired. Make sure that you're holding it nice and tight while you fire. Now this one does have interchangeable chokes. Like we talked last time, this was a gun from the last video. How the chokes work between a cylinder choke and a full choke, and how tight you can get your pattern. So now we're going to just talk, we briefly touched on ammo. We've got a wide variety in front of us. Jimmy, why don't you talk about what the differences between a lot of these are?
So you have a lot of different intended purposes. I mean, obviously there are a lot of them that are designed that aren't necessarily for home defense. more like a hunting type situation, but they can be incredibly effective for home defense as well. These target loads you have here, they're basically designed for shooting sporting clays. But again, it's one of those varieties that's a little bit of a non-lethal, or not as lethal as something more of like a deer slug. It's going to give you one single projectile. It's a lot bigger, it's a lot heavier, it's going to have more stopping power. The bad thing about that is you could have to worry a little bit about over-penetration inside your house. What's on the other side of that wall if you miss your intended target. Where the bird shot, or something that's designed for clay pigeon shooting, it's not going to over-penetrate through the walls and hit whoever's on the other side. Your deer slug, whole different story. But there are a lot of different variations. So 8-shot is relatively small. You have a lot more BBs in there, a lot more pellets than what you would in like a double-aught buck, where a double-aught buck is going to be much bigger in size. Again, it's going to have a lot more stopping power, but you have a little bit more of a possibility of it over penetrating. And we're going to continue to do some videos to see exactly what it looks like, if you shoot through a wall with different types of target loads. The other type, there's obviously, these are designed specifically for self-defense, home defense. They're the Winchester Defender. Great option because you have a 1-ounce slug in conjunction with triple-aught buck plated BBs. So that's a nice option as well.
Yep.
Go ahead, John.
Now they do come in a variety of calibers. This one here is 410. So as we transition in, shotguns come in many calibers, the most common being 12.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a person who's recoil sensitive and doesn't want to use a handgun, what kind of options do I have for a shotgun wise?
Sure. 12 gauge and 20 gauge are probably definitely the most popular. You have 28 gauges out there, 16 gauge, 410s, a great option. Relatively no to very low recoil with a 410 shotgun. It's great for somebody that's maybe a little bit smaller than John or myself. That recoil can definitely make a huge difference. The other option is that you can get them lots of different, same combinations, pump, semi-automatic, break action, in the 410 just as well as the 12 gauge. So kind of shoot some different things and find out what actually works for you. Find something that you can shoot confidently. You're not afraid of the recoil. It doesn't do you a whole lot of good. If you're trying to stop an attacker, if you have to close your eyes before you squeeze the trigger, you're probably less likely to hit your intended target. So try some different things and find out what works for you recoil wise.
Now, Jimmy, as we see with our guns here, they've got pretty short barrels. Now, would you recommend a shorter barrel or a longer barrel for home defense? Like, if I'm at home, I go to here and I see a 28-inch barrel gun. It's a little bit cheaper than that 18.5-inch barrel. Is it better to have a 28-inch barrel or 26, or is it better to have that 18.5?
In a home situation, defensive situation, you're in a confined area. You're not looking at shooting incredibly long distances. So absolutely, the shorter barrel is going to be a lot more effective. For whatever reason, you try and walk through the door and your gun's longer than the door and you get stuck halfway through, not such a great option. You probably see that on a lot of Looney Tunes episodes. So the shorter barrel is good for that. For movement, it's going to swing a lot quicker, getting towards your intended target. So a lot of advantages that way. And you really don't need the extra length unless you're out hunting, shooting clays, anything like that.
Before we wrap it up, what kind of accessories would you recommend for a home defense shotgun? A light, a laser, maybe a side saddle, something like that?
Light's great. Lasers are always good. When somebody breaks in your house, it's probably going to be at night, so you're looking at a low light situation. The laser and light's going to help you with that. Having some type of sighting system on the gun. This Wilson Combat in particular has a ghost ring for a rear sight, and it actually has a tritium night sight for the front sight. So it's going to glow in the dark. If you can make out your intended target, which usually most people's houses aren't completely pitch black, you can see a little bit even in the evening. So you'll be able to see that front sight. So at least you'll be able to somewhat, and with the shotgun, usually you only have to get close. It's a nice thing whenever you're using bird shot or something with plated BBs in it. It tends to, the grouping of the ammunition itself, the bullets, they get bigger as they get further away from the gun itself. So you don't have to worry about precision shooting. You know, as long as you get it close to that torso area, you know, it's going to be effective.
And as you saw in our shotgun patterning video, you saw that exact situation. We were 20 feet away, which is your average room distance or hallway distance, and you can see how that pattern, it was in the center. It was big, but not too big. It was still man size. So accessory wise, you know, what if I want to do like a folding stock? Would you recommend doing a pistol grip only, like just a hold it down here kind of pump, or would you rather have a shouldered firearm?
A pistol grip, I would rather have a shoulder fired, personally. You know, the pistol grip, a lot of people like those. Definitely shoot one first, make sure it's the right one for you. You might even look at, you know, 410, 20 gauge, something with a little less recoil. Obviously, accuracy is not going to quite be there when you're shooting, you know, from the hip or something like that. So that's something you have to be concerned with also.
Speaking of which, you know, everybody's seen the Shockwave. Here in Ohio, they're not relatively allowed just yet as of today. Hopefully they fix that for us. But would you recommend something like the Shockwave for home protection, or would you rather still, again, have that full shouldered length?
I'm used to that full shouldered length just from, you know, doing things that I've done, you know, in the past as far as hunting. It's a little bit more natural to me. And I've shot it a lot, shooting sporting clays, things like that, that I'm very used to shoulder firing the shotgun. So it's a little bit more instinctive. You know, whatever you get, practice with it. Make sure that you understand how the gun works, the semi-automatic, the pump gun. You know, the more you shoot with it, the more you have an opportunity of encountering malfunctions, learning how to, you know, clear those malfunctions. You know, in the real world, you don't have the opportunity to just say, hold on a second, my gun's not working right. You know, make sure you know where the safeties are. Make sure you're already checking to make sure those safeties are disengaged before you need to shoot the gun. But those Shockwaves, a lot of people that, you know, really like them because they're small, they're compact. You know, realistically, are you ever going to have to use it? Hopefully not. But you know, if you do need to use it, you need to make sure that you can shoot it. You can shoot it accurately. They do have a lot of recoil. They're relatively hard to hold on to. So just make sure you practice and know how they're going to handle, how they're going to function.
Now, some of you might be saying, well, what about the guns like the Judge, the Governor, the Howdah pistol that we have in store currently, the 410 pistols? We're going to talk about those when we talk about handguns for home protection. But just to touch on it, Jimmy, what do you think about like a 410 handgun?
Great option. You know, they've done a lot as far as developing defensive rounds for the 410 handguns. Great option. You know, a lot of different variety. Again, you can kind of load them in a way that you have less lethal rounds first, followed by something that's a little bit has a little more stopping power. So great options there.
So, as we wrap this video up, I'd like to thank Jimmy for joining us today.
Thanks for having
me. Us out. So overall, would you say a shotgun's a great option for somebody who's not going to maybe practice a lot or keep it in the house, practice every once in a while? It's got a lot of great advantages to it, but a few disadvantages, as in ammo capacity and recoil.
Yeah, I mean, recoil is obviously an issue, but you know, like I said, there are a lot of different calibers out there for you to choose. I personally like them a lot for home protection. You know, one is that not worrying so much about the over-penetration, you know, hitting somebody else that's in another room that's not my intended target. You have a little less capacity, but statistically speaking, you know, having 30, 40, 50 rounds, you shouldn't need that many in a defensive situation. 3 rounds is typically good enough. So if you have a few extra, most of your shotguns, you know, you can range from 5 to 7 rounds in them depending on the gun and a lot of different variations, but hopefully at that point in time, if you've already shot 7 times and they're still standing, you got some other issues to worry about. I think after the first shot they probably should be running in the opposite direction, but you know, again, you don't really know. So
well, again, like I said, thank you, Jimmy, for joining us today. Thanks to everybody for watching today. This is going to be a part of our series of home defense videos, like we said in our last video. Like Jimmy said, we're going to be doing drywall tests, ballistic gels tests. We're going to expand this out to give you guys the best knowledge you possibly can get. Please subscribe and like our YouTube page. hit the little bell in the corner to get notifications when these videos get posted. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. These videos are being cross-posted between Facebook and YouTube. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment below or come in the store and ask us what we think. Again, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate you coming
Thanks,
out
John.
today and helping us. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.